go and take another tour, leaving you here. I like that. Anyways, 3 of the key goals of Plan YC, our plan to build a greener Greater New York, are economic development, new housing, and parks and green spaces. And the one resource that all 3 require is land, which, as Mark Twain so wisely pointed out, they aren't exactly making any more of. Now, whether Mark Twain ever really said that, or Yogi Berra, or Mae West, or Dorothy Parker, any of these people ever said what we attribute to them, I don't know, since they were all before my time, although that's hard to believe, if there's anything before my time, but there was. Anyways, if Mark Twain didn't say this, he should have. So in order for our city to grow, we've got to make better use of the land that we do have, and that's why many of our Plan YC innovations focus on the remediation of brownfields. These are areas that need some level of environmental review or cleanup before any redevelopment can occur. You should know that New York has approximately 7,600 acres of brownfield, and virtually all the land along the Bronx River, which was one of the major industrial waterways of this city for a century or more, are polluted, and we've got to do something about that. We want to use that land. To help unlock the potential of these sites, we've invested $18 million, we will invest $18 million over the next 5 years to encourage testing, cleanup, and remediation. And to oversee this work, we've also set up a New York City Office of Environmental Remediation as part of the Mayor's Office of Operations, which also oversees Plan YC initiatives. And today I'm pleased to introduce to you its first director, Daniel Walsh. Daniel, wave. Daniel, as you know, comes to us from the State Department of Environmental Conservation, where he headed up the state's New York City Brownfields program. He has expert knowledge of the state standards of remediation, which makes him the perfect person to manage these types of cleanups in New York City and also lobby Albany for more money. And he works for you, is that right? He works for the Mayor's Office of Operations, run by Jeff Kay. So if it's not done quickly, expeditiously, and efficiently, blame them. I thought I would have got a laugh out of that. Must be hot or my humor is failing. Anyways, reclaiming brownfields requires cooperation at every level of our government, as you know. And today our city is full of sites that we've successfully worked with the state and federal governments to reclaim, from Barretto Point Park in the Bronx to the former Rheingold Brewery plant in Bushwick, which is now the home of more than 250 families. Another great example is this concrete plant park where we're standing. This site used to be, because of the name you can tell this, and because of the decor, a concrete mixing plant. Now, working in close partnership with the community, the Parks Department and the Bronx River Alliance, we're creating a beautiful waterfront park here that will cover nearly 3 acres. We have so many more acres of brownfields throughout the 5 boroughs, and it's our responsibility to find innovative ways to expedite cleanups and make these properties more attractive to developers. And that's why we created an office dedicated to brownfields. And today we're asking for the state support on 5 key proposals that we have developed. We've got plenty of time left, 570 days, to get some of these things done. And if the state could deliver some of the things we need from them, we can use them and really make a big difference and leave this city a better city, and a city with more potential for our children. A local voluntary brownfield cleanup program that splits these 2 issues could help us clear a bottleneck. Wait a second here. First, let me step back. I want to list the programs that we have asked the state to support. First, we're asking the state to authorize a local brownfield cleanup program for New York City to address moderately contaminated sites. While many developers want to make use of the state's tax credit program to develop brownfields, some would be interested in building even without the tax credit if, and it's a very big if, they could be assured that the site was safe for development and be released from any potential liability down the road. We should know that right now, unfortunately, the tax credit and state liability release are part of the same program, meaning you have to apply for a tax credit to get the release. And the problem is that many of these projects are thrown out of the program because the state just doesn't have enough money to support them. And when they are thrown out, they can't get the liability release they need. And as a result, many good projects just can't move forward. So it makes a lot of sense for the state to decouple the 2. The state doesn't have the money to help, and if the program can go ahead without state money, that's great. But there's no reason that if they get a liability release, if they take money, they shouldn't get the liability release. If they don't take money, it should stand on the facts as to whether or not the site is clean and safe, and not whether or not they take state money. It's in our interest to have them do more things without state money, and we don't want to dissuade them from doing it. A local voluntary brownfield cleanup program could split these two issues, clean up the bottleneck, and a combination of city and state oversight would allow developers to clean up brownfields, earn their liability release more quickly instead of standing in line for state funding they don't want or need. And it would allow New York City to move forward on a number of new projects, create new housing and open space. And best of all, it wouldn't cost the state a thing. So it's a win-win if they can do this. Second, we'd like to see state brownfield credits distributed more effectively. One way to do this would be to spread out the credits across more projects. This might reduce the amount of individual tax credit benefits, but it would also increase the pool of available credits and encourage a greater number of developers to build on brownfield sites. Third, we propose adding an incentive in the form of at least a 10% tax credit for sites in the so-called brownfields opportunity areas, which we are developing in collaboration with the community. This will bolster community participation in neighborhood development projects. Fourth, we'd like to see more sites become eligible for state cleanup oversight, particularly historic fill sites, which have long been rejected from the program. Historic fill sites, you should know, are landfills, usually along the waterfront, that were built before 1970. The state brownfield program now rejects these sites because of the high cost involved. Including them in the state's brownfield cleanup program, however, would go a long ways toward creating new parks and open space along New York's waterfront, another key goal of Plan YC. Fifth and finally, we hope the state will consider our proposal to streamline the Brownfield Opportunity Area Grant Program. Right now, that program is managed by both the Department of Environmental Conservation and the Department of State. And while clearly DEC should oversee such matters as site assessment and remediation planning, the Department of State is the agency best positioned to administer grants and should be the sole administrator of the BOA program. BOA is the Brownfields Opportunity Area Program. Reclaiming brownfields is a great investment in the city's long-term health and vitality, and we think together these five proposals we've outlined today will help us make those investments sooner rather than later. They are currently being discussed by our partners in state government, and I urge them to reach an agreement on a package of reforms during this legislative session. We look forward to working together with the state to build on what has been a great environmental legacy for New York. That legacy has been shaped not only by the Democratic and Republican governors, but also by Democrats and Republicans in both houses of the legislature. It's a terrific example of how we already have worked together for a greener, greater New York, and what we can do in the future. Now, on that note, let me turn the floor over to our new director for the New York City Office of Environmental Remediation, Daniel.